it's also kind of an interesting, loaded question as well. Just as, I mean, particularly for native artists, and particularly for here in Santa Fe, the like those pots, the original pots, they used to be big. They used to be big pots, which would be even more difficult to travel with. And you know, Harvey came along and he said, make tiny pots, you know, curio cabinet pots. And so they started doing that. So I would say that the whole realm that native art began it's established in the, you know, broader sense as far as a commodity goes, has always been market based. You know what I'm saying? This Indian market, you know, was supply and demand, you know, and yeah, shifted to jewelry because, well, damn it, those little pots don't fit anymore, you know. So let's see where that ends up, you know, further down the road. But yeah, it's there. It's always present. It's always present that you want to make something that is, you know, can be sold, you know, just because this is our living. But that's one of my, I don't know, I can't stand that. And I'm really bad at being consistent too, artistically. I'm all over the place. And it's pretty, you know, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's kind of difficult for any sort of representation or, you know, like, I don't know if any of you even know who I am, but I'm working. I'm a working guy. And, you know, but I put together some weird stuff, you know, weird materials and weird content. But for me, it's all about, like, Alex. Sorry, I just met Alex. Just like Alex said, it's about honesty. You know, where does that honesty begin? Where does it end? And at the end of the day, you're only lying to yourself, you know? And somebody might buy that lie, but you're the one who's got to sleep on it, you know? So.
I don't get offended if anybody loves this artist who just died. But Thomas Kincaid, I think, is the ultimate sellout to answer your question.
Or the greatest conceptual artist.
You know, I don't know. Maybe he was a very, very great artist in art school. And then all of a sudden he turned around and said, you know what, forget this. I just want to make millions and make mouse pads and water bottles and stuff like that. So I think that's the classic case to answer your question. But to me, that's, you know, that's a sellout of your entire being or your entire being as an artist. So I think that question about the market is not just a native one, but it's, you know, an artist one. So I think we don't even have to, you know, categorize it just as native, but just as an artist. Because we all have that same notion, idea. So I hope none of y'all love Thomas Kincaid.
Yes. I just want to, since this fits the question so well, I don't know how many people have seen Bob House's show out at Roxanne Swenson's Howard Gallery, but he has a show that is essentially not for sale. And it's the concept there is that, you know, culturally we make objects for ourselves, and too often they're always sold. And so the good stuff never gets to come home. And so he's done, you know, essentially 6 years of work, and it's not available, much to the sadness of his collectors. But he's, you know, it speaks also to this authenticity and. Also, what you're talking about is putting yourself into your work. You know, the commercial aspect, you know, is there a difference between, say, somebody like an Andy Warhol who could just produce across everything, yet his work is in auction still selling for millions? Why? That's not the truth of native work. So there's a double standard given what you're talking about. So I think, you know, making work or making work that talks about who you are. You're talking about the education of artists, the public. That narrative is you, and then what's native about it is you. You know, whatever tribal affiliation or whatever it is that you are. And when people buy your work, if they don't get that, then you're cheating them. You know, this is you, whether you're doing something that's totally abstract or influenced by Rothko or whoever. You know, hopefully it's not Rothko.
Stealing
But
in any case,
I agree with everything you said. That was my point. I hate to see the thing that I'm learning about, which is that, and let's just take metalsmiths, who are doing, artists that I really love, are doing reproductions of their work in huge numbers, bracelets, earrings, whatever. And I know, I can understand that it might be necessary to support the family, but I just hate to see it happen, because eventually the goose is going to kill the golden egg, so to speak.
But I think it's, again, that's that double standard.
It
Right?
is.
It should be okay for that artist to make
Is
produce
okay.
as many as possible.
It is
You know,
okay.
if he wants to be a Thomas Kincaid, there are
That's
native
his-
artists that want to be Thomas
That's
Kincaid.
his choice.
You know, and there are native artists that don't ever want to sell their work. You know,
And they have rich boyfriends and girlfriends.
I think it's about being, what they're talking about is this truthfulness in what you're doing, and that has nothing to do with blood quantum or any of the other aspects that define indie market.
I just don't think those 60 shops that are in town, sure, it'd be great if they were gone, but that's like McDonald's competing with like a 5-star restaurant, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can get one of those things, but it's generic, and you can see it, you know? And anybody who sees that hang, you know, in your house, they're not going to be like, oh, that's a beautiful slip cast piece that you got painted with, you know, whatever, toothpaste, you know, is that toothpaste that makes it turquoise? That's really nice. It's different, you know, it's ultimately it's different. These little shops will never, they'll never defeat us. God knows America has tried to put us down. Like, yeah, America is always saying bad things about me.
Great.
Give me a C.
You didn't deserve that.
The interesting thing about that's a great question or idea. Hopefully we'll get more directly onto that next week. Of course, one of the most interesting things about your question is historical context in Santa Fe, because in the 20s and 30s, Indian market was created to work against the sweatshops here in town, which were native people, Cochiti, San Domingo, a little bit of the northern Tehuel Pueblos, but they would sit here, particularly on Palace, and they would make jewelry together, kind of in an assembly line. And Indian market was specifically generated. Now that material made in those years is now venerated. Just the same way, which is just the same way as hand-built pottery with acrylic paints from Hamas or from Tasuki, made in the 40s and 50s, is now also very collectible or venerated in a way. So it's an interesting, but this is a different, I don't disagree, that this is a different insidious way that things are happening from the outside, and people are buying into an idea of Indian, if there is such a thing, rather than buying something that is actually created for trades, like a piece of pottery that happens to be acrylically painted, or maybe something that's not as well made as a wonderful bracelet. It's an okay bracelet because people need to eat, versus something that is wonderfully made, one of a kind, because I've got a lot of time, I made a lot of money last year, I can spend the time not having to sell something every week to pay my bills and feed my kids. So there's a lot of those sort of questions that come in. I think one of the things that we've hit on here that is essential, which I really appreciate people talking about, which was a sort of unforeseen in a way I hadn't really framed the conversation like that, is we've immediately gotten to two columns, one being authenticity and one being honesty, which I think is very interesting.